Well, this is a paramotor. There's two major components, which you might be able to see behind me, is the wing, which is basically a parachute that's a little bit more aerodynamic than a skydiving parachute. And then, of course, the motor unit, and that includes the harness and the motor, propeller, so on. Altogether, it's called a paramotor or powered paragliding, depending on who you ask. I got involved in this hobby probably back in my childhood. My grandfather was a pilot, a private pilot, owned his own airplane, and I flew it as a very young child. That got me interested in aviation. I got my pilot's license while I was in high school. A lot of fun, it's a lot of expensive. So I didn't do it too much. Loved doing it, but it just wasn't economical for someone that doesn't do it as a career. So, long story short, 20 years ago, I saw one of these things. And both me and my dad were at an air show. We thought it was awesome. In fact, my dad was so interested, he looked into them. And 20 years ago, this kind of was a new sport. It was as expensive as could be, terribly expensive, and not a whole lot of options out there. Fast forward a couple of years ago, I saw on YouTube a video of this, and I thought to myself, let's look into that again. Let's see where it's at. And looked into it, and hey, it's reasonably priced now. I can do this. So I did. I've been doing this for 1.5 years now. I'm intermediate to moving on to advanced. I'm starting to do some aerobatic type stuff, kicking it around a little bit more. You know, I'm always learning, so I mean, there's always that. But I feel comfortable enough to do some stuff that's riskier. The wing behind me is advanced, well, intermediate to advanced, and in a nutshell, what that means is I pull on the brakes, and the brakes you just have left and right. On a less advanced wing, it takes quite a bit of force. On a wing like this behind me, I just basically think about it and I'm moving. I probably had 30-35 hours in it without looking, and 10-15 hours just maintenance. It made me a two-stroke mechanic. I knew nothing about two-strokes, carburetors. I knew what they were, but I'd never dug into them, and it's definitely made me into one of those, because no one around here services them. People are scared to, because they're basically an aircraft, and no one wants that liability. So I'm doing it myself, which is actually quite fun. I found that's almost as fun as flying. My original equipment cost me $6,000. Now that included a different frame than what you see behind me, aluminum, a lot more sturdy, unbreakable, you know, barring a real bad crash, and then a different wing. This is a much more advanced wing than I started on, but the original equipment was $6,000, and that was used, lightly used, but it was reasonable. This is the frame, harness, and engine. This is what's strapped to my back. All in all, it's about 60 pounds empty, and load her up 75 pounds of gas. Well, 75 pounds after gas. Moving front to back here, we'll start with the D-rings. They're just carabiners, like they're similar to what you use for climbing, but a little bit different. They're rated for a pretty ridiculous amount. They attach to the swing arms. Now the swing arms pivot. These pivot in the air and allow me to lean. And as I lean, it makes me turn that direction. So if I put one foot over the other, like so, as I'm flying, I'll turn left. I'll turn right. Now it's very slow, but if I really throw my body into it, I can really get turning. That helps take off the brake pressure, which we'll get to later. As we're moving in, looking at what's called the harness. Now this is not so much a harness as like a parachute, a parachutist would wear. It's more of a seat. Now, as I get lift and the risers start pulling up, the seat comes up. Now the seat is actually behind me as I'm taking off, like so. So as I take off, I just lift up my legs, the seat will fall in. And as it is a harness, but it's more of a seat, so I'm more or less just sitting in there. I'm not tight by any stretch of the imagination. And so negative G's are bad news in these things. One, they collapse the parachute, and two, I'm not really in the harness, so I could get a little discombobulated. All right, next thing is the throttle. This, just put it on your hand, you squeeze it to go. This allows you to operate the brakes and, you know, do whatever you need to do with your hand at the same time. The harness is connected to the frame. The frames protect the pilot from the propeller. It also protects propeller if I fall on takeoff or landing. It'll keep, hopefully, and not always, keep the propeller out of the dirt, risers of the parachute and so on. Behind this is just the engine. It's a two-stroke, 25 horsepower. It's made by Viterazzi in Italy. It's specific for paramotoring. There's not much to them. It's a two-stroke. Airbox, carburetor, cylinder, exhaust. And it's redrived into the propeller, which spins roughly 3,200 RPM or so. The engine's doing 8,300 at its top, but it's redrived to about 3,200 RPM. Down here we have the gas tank. It's a 4-gallon gas tank. I can get about 4 hours of flying out of this, so a gallon an hour if I'm not doing anything too crazy. So it's considerably long range if you are so inclined to do so. Not.
Okay, I deal in rather small projects sometimes. I have done larger projects, but it's basically in smaller projects of woodworking and dealing with basically hardwoods, some softwoods. But the thing I really like to do is make the project and then let somebody else finish the work, because I'm not necessarily that good in finishing the work with staining and varnishing. I don't care to do that, but I do it from time to time. Projects, entertainment center, small table in the house, a desk, and then small projects were games that kids can play, and do-it-yourself, well, not really do-it-yourself, but put-it-together projects that youth can do. Cut the wood out and drill the holes and have it ready for them to put together. I really like to do that, and have in the past done quite a bit on that. Having grown up on a farm, it's an advantage for anyone when you're talking about woodworking. And I did grow up on a farm, and through high school we had woodworking and metalworking and mechanical drawing, and I got involved and liked that kind of work, and I made a kitchen cupboards for my parents one time in one year, and another year I made a hay rack. So that's really how I got started in woodworking. Then I went to the service, come back, got married, and got into chemistry at the lab. And virtually there was, through those years of working at the lab, I did have a little small room in the first house we were in, and did some small work. But then we moved to another area, and I was able to build a shop, and that's where we're at now. And I just like working with wood because it's something that you don't necessarily know how you're going to do it, but you see a project and you work it out and figure the dimensions and things like that. It's interesting. I think that's why I enjoyed mechanical drawing so much, because you can interpret a picture. You even have a picture, and you know what one little part of that picture's dimensions are, so you expand it into the whole thing and make the project. Okay, if you want to get involved in woodworking, you're really going to have a tool. And the basic tool to woodworking is a bench saw. That's the basic tool. That means that it's rather large. You don't want a cheap one, you want a good one. It's rather large, so you're going to have a place for it. And that will tweak your interest in making things, because you can make virtually anything with a table saw. You don't have to have all the other stuff, but a table saw is basic. And if you start to do some table saw work, I think you're going to enjoy doing further work. I think that will probably get you into it. I think that would be basic. If you're interested in turning wood, then you need to get a wood lathe. So you got two different options here. Whether you're going to turn wood or not, you have to have the lathe, and the other work could be done with the table saw. So I think either one of those would tweak your interest in working with wood. And then once you see what it will do, and you get the finished project, then it'll help you once you get the finished project. Okay, I have several samples of wood here, and we're going to start with some of the softer woods that all of the softer woods could be used for carving, but a lot of them are used for construction also. For instance, you have cottonwood, which is for boxing and crating, and pine is framework for houses. Western cedar is shingles or siding. The redwood is also siding too. Aromatic cedar you can use, it's sometimes used for siding too, but you can make cedar chests out of it to keep the moths away. Those are basically, and basswood is another softwood. That's typically used a lot for carving. But it's a nice straight grained, easy wood to work with. Then we go to the hardwoods. Now locust is an extremely hard wood that has a lot of value as far as firewood is concerned, because there's a lot of heat in that. I think black locust is one of the most heat in that wood of any of them. And then cherry is a wood that it will age, it will darken as it ages, and it gets beautiful eventually. It is a hard wood to work with because you have to really work with sanding it to get it down smooth. Mahogany is kind of, it's a hardwood, but it's not very hard. It's one of the softer hardwoods, and there's a lot of furniture made out of that. Birch, kitchen cupboards and things like that, furniture and flooring. It's a very hard wood too. And walnut is a native wood that a lot of furniture and gun stocks, cabinets are made of. I like the red oak. There is white oak also. White oak is a little cheaper than red oak. but I like the color of the red oak over the white oak. And a lot of the work that I do with oak. It's a nice wood to work with. It sands nice, tastes nice, and you can get a good finish on it. Ash was a furniture and flooring. I know green ash or black ash. We have a black ash in our kitchen flooring that I put down. It's a really hard wood that wears well. And maple's another furniture flooring wood that is similar to birch. It has a little different grain, but as far as working with it, it's about the same as birch. I think that covers most of them. I do have what they call Carly maple, but I don't understand that very well. I'm not sure. It is a maple. And then there's hickory, and I haven't really worked with hickory much. It's a hardwood, but I don't know much about it. Okay, I think and when you were talking about hobbies, it's something that you're not forced to do. You make that choice of doing it, and you like to do it. With a work situation, it's 8 to 5, and you're forced into doing it. But with a hobby, that's not the case. It's when you're enjoying something, it's easier to take some time out. But by the same token, you need to be sure that you're not out here too much, because you could lose your sleep.
Well, a hobby to me is something I do, but it's not absolutely consuming. You can give or take a hobby and be okay, but I can't go away with this. I can't not fly. It kills me in the winter to go a month or two straight and not fly. In the summer or spring, summer, fall, I'm flying as much as possible. And that's the obsession. It's totally taken over my evenings, I should say.